the rule is like 1 page is 1 minute, roughly. So I would write if it's him driving, I wouldn't write Dwight drives. One of the producers would make fun of me because I was writing like Dwight's hunched over, barely manning the wheel. His shoulders rattle through every pothole. He veers off. His eyes are like fixed. His gaze moves. Because I know that when you shorten the movie, even though there's not much happening, you might sit on that for 30 seconds. So then I'm like, all right, it has to be half a page.
Hey, my name is Alec C. Cohen, and welcome to My First Film, the video podcast where we ask some of Hollywood's hottest directors how they made their first film. Today, I'm honored to be joined by director Jonathan Cuartas. He made a striking debut feature film called My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To. It has vampires, it has siblings, it has hospice care. It's really a beautiful, super striking debut feature with a really strong voice, and I'm so honored to have Jonathan here to tell the full story. I think this podcast will be really important for people who don't live in the major U.S. filmmaking hubs like Los Angeles, New York, and Atlanta to see how they can still get a movie off the ground. Jonathan was living in Miami, where he was able to find his key collaborators and get the funding, and they went and shot the movie in Utah. So there's a ton of great information in this podcast you're about to watch. Please stick around until the very end for an update on my first film, Petunia. Without further ado, here's Jonathan. Jonathan Cuartas.
Good.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk about your film, your debut feature, which is out and people can watch it now. But why don't we start from the beginning? Why don't you tell me where you're from and if sort of your upbringing influenced any part of your filmmaking?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm from Miami, Florida, born and raised. Both of my parents came from Colombia in the 80s, and I think it definitely did influence. I think now more with the stuff I'm writing, it's more of a direct influence to my heritage and culture, but even the first film was very inspired by stuff that happened with my family or in my family, even if it's very indirectly. Okay. It was all sort of a conversation about hospice and like letting your loved ones go and accepting death. But yeah, I think family is such a big thing, and especially in like a Latino household. I still live with my parents sometimes, and we're all like really good friends. So I grew up in the suburbs of Miami. So I was born in Hialeah, but then we lived in Kendall, which is like very west outside of the city. So it was a very specific upbringing, and it wasn't so much about cameras. It was a lot of going to the movies. Like our parents would take us to the movies. I have two brothers, and all five of us would go to the movies like twice a week, and we would just watch anything. And it wasn't even a horror diet. It was just any movie. I was actually scared of horror movies.
So did you guys have access to art house cinemas?
We were doing like mainstream commercial movies at AMC and Regal.
How did you eventually be like, okay, I'm going to go to film school?
It's interesting because in middle school, I was taking keyboard class, and I thought it was like piano keyboard, but it was keyboard from a computer. So it was like a typing course. And there was a project, and they asked us to determine what our career would be. That was like the assignment. And I'm like, oh, I want to be a movie producer. I don't know why I said that, but I had already been drawing in elementary school, writing bad short stories, like just handwritten. When they asked me to do that project, for some reason, I just said producer, and then I looked it up, and I'm like, wait, a producer's not the writer. I'm like, so who writes it? And then I found the word screenwriter, and from there, I sort of fell in love with the idea of writing for the screen.
Amazing.
And then in high school, I did creative writing classes, and our final project was we had to write a play and perform it in the class. And I'm like, I can't do that. I'm like, I'm too nervous. We all convinced our teacher to let us film our final projects.
No way.
And they were the worst films ever. And we played them on like that corner TV,
yeah,
old like black box TV, CRT on the corner. And it was like no sound, so no one could hear anything. But the idea of translating the words into pictures was so cool to me.
So tell me what those early days of film school are like.
We wanted to go to film school, and we decided to go to Miami-Dade College because it was like cheaper. And we were like, all right, we're going to get a degree. And I sort of promised to my parents, you know, I'm first generation, and that was something that they came here, and my dad was the first of his big family to get a degree at all. And so it was like a priority for them, and I wanted to honor that. So, but I still wanted to do film school, and they were very supportive.
Yeah.
But what I also wanted to do was still maintain the love and the perseverance to pursue it further than just your assignments.
Yeah.
And so we got a Canon 7D that my brother and I think my parents like helped us buy, and we bought these like cheap off-brand ARRI lights.
Yeah.
We started making shorts between semesters that were not part of the assignment. And I think that really helped us expand not just our skill, but also our willingness and just like the grit of making a movie. And so my brother and I were sort of working on different projects in school because we were in different courses.
Yeah.
But outside of school, we wanted to make this short film, and then we were like, all right, who's directing, who's DPing? And then we decided that I would direct the first one and he would shoot it. And we never actually rotated because we fell in love with our respective roles.
Yeah.
And it was such a close collaboration anyway, like you're saying, that it felt like we were both directing and we were both shooting and both producing. I think another thing that's important to note that might come up later is we were also working on other people's things. It wasn't just, let's make our movies. We wanted to attach ourselves to people that, or collaborate with people that we felt were already better, or that they knew more, or they had more experience. So and my brother was very much like the one leading that charge, which is cool. He asked me to go to, I think it was Jacksonville, to go work on one of his friend's shorts for free. And we like put ourselves up in a hotel.
Wow.
And worked on this short film for a day. And I was like, I was like a grip or something, and I got yelled at in the middle of the set. It was super embarrassing, but it was those kinds of things that we were just like trying not to be afraid to go and help and try to learn.
Yeah.
And I still to this day work on other people's films as other roles, not as a director. And I think it's so important to just love it so much that you're doing different things for your friends or people that you care about. So that's that part of it.
Yeah.
But for the proof of concept, it wasn't intended to be a proof of concept. It was just a short that I had written, and I almost didn't pitch it because I had another idea that I was going to do with a producer friend of mine, and he didn't get into the class. So I'm like, I'm not going to pitch. I'll just DP or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I actually shot a lot of movies in film school, and everyone kind of encouraged me, and I loved my peers in film school. Like everyone was really cool.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, just pitch, just try it. And there were like 20 people pitching projects, and I pitched and we got it. And so we made the movie, and my brother didn't actually, that's the only one he didn't shoot because it had to be like within your class.
Yeah.
So my friend Zach shot that, who now he's like great Steadicam operator in Miami.
Yeah.
But my brother was still like a producer kind of, and he was a key grip. So he was very much there.
Yeah.
And it was, to this day, like probably one of my favorite sets that I've ever been on. The cast was great. The crew was great. And it did well. And then I feel like we just wanted to expand it after film. I think it was more like, all right, we graduated, and everyone's like, okay, good luck.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, what do we do now? So then we looked at what we had, and that was one that I felt like could be expanded. Like the world felt like there was more to it.
Totally.
And so I just literally opened that script document and started to write more on that script.
It's amazing.
And that's kind of how it started.
You're watching a lot of these sort of like four corner, like big blockbuster entertainment movies. but the films that I've seen of yours are very art house feeling. What were your big inspirations going into this short?
Yeah, at this point, it was like maybe I made that film in 2015, but I think from the start of film school, I was sort of expanding and I was becoming less of just like Tarantino fanboy. I mean, I still love his movies, but I started dating this girl and she had like such cool taste. Like she showed me Old Boy and she showed me Dogtooth and like Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. And I just started devouring like Korean revenge films and I started watching more foreign movies. And then I kind of got into like slower cinema. And I think one of the introductions to that, which probably isn't slow cinema, but it felt very artistically rendered compared to like the action thrillers that I was used to. It was called The Rover. It's this movie that I love so much. And I remember watching that in 2014. And that was such a big influence for Kuru, which is the short proof of concept. Just the atmosphere, the focus on characters, the lack of dialogue, just the drawn out pacing, but still being able to convey something that's beautiful and violent and poetic at the same time. So it was that, and then the more on the nose reference was Let the Right One In. But I think when I pitched it in film school, I said this is Let the Right One In meets Dogtooth, because Dogtooth has the three siblings. Weird situation. They're kind of stuck with the situation. And I remember I feel like when I pitched that, they were like, they felt so. I remember my professor after I graduated, he's like, I remember you pitched, and I was like, I don't really know what he's talking about, but I know that he knows what he's talking about.
Love that.
I'm like, that's such a great point, because I just love those movies so much.
I love that. And so how long did it take you from that first day, taking that document, starting the feature, until you had something that you were ready to show people?
Yeah, so we finished the short in 2016, and then we were doing festivals 2017. At the same time I was writing. So we had a pretty good draft, I want to say like end of 2017. And by that point, we shared it with who would end up being our producers. And from there, we shot 2019. So it released 2020, but we shot mid 2019. So it really wasn't that long. Because in 2018, we were just still figuring out like, how are we going to get the money? How are we going to structure everything? And in 2018, the producer, Kenny, he was like, you haven't directed in a while. Why don't you make another short? So we made another short that was completely unrelated. It's called The Horse and the Stag. And it was a great idea because it kind of put me and Mike on set again. My dad was a production designer on that. So it was like the start of that relationship. And it helped us like kind of get into the rhythm again, because it would have been a long time to go from 2015 to 2019 without directing.
Totally. So we'll back up there a little bit. When did you first meet Kenny, and like what was his involvement level at the beginning?
So this goes back to what I was saying about working on other people's things. And my brother and I credit a lot of us making the first film to Mike, because he was really proactive in like reaching out to these people. So Kenny Riches, who I love, he's like one of my best friends now. He's from Salt Lake City originally, and then he moved to Miami. He made this movie that they dubbed like the Miami Napoleon Dynamite. It's called The Strongest Man. That's a plug. And he became like this filmmaker that was highly regarded in Miami. And so we went to these talks, and he got into Sundance, and we were like, oh, we really have to like hang out with him and become friends with him and work with him. And my brother was, we call this like the hey dude story. My brother was constantly messaging him on Facebook like, hey man, hey dude, hey, what's up? And they would sometimes they would just be like a normal conversation, like, hey, what's up? Nothing much. How are you? Doing well. All right, cool. And then eventually my brother was like, hey, let's get coffee. Let's get lunch. And then he sort of built this relationship, and lo and behold, Kenny had another feature that he was directing. My brother's like, hey, maybe I could be the gaffer, and I could be the assistant editor. And we're like, we'll do it. Mike was like, would you do it for free? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So it was 2017.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting paid a little, which was awesome because we were working at Chili's. And we were like, hey, if we get 100 a day or something like that, that's like working as a server, but we're doing what we love. So we went to Orlando, actually, this town called Mount Dora. We made this film with Kenny, get super close with him. You know, we're making jokes. We become friends. And I love that it came from friendship first.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a parasitic relationship.
Yeah.
Like, what can you give me?
Totally.
Patrick Fugit was on that film too.
Wow.
So we just became close with him. And by the end of it, I think we were in the Keys actually, and we were doing like pickups, and Kenny, I had already shown Kenny the short and I shared the script just to share it.
Yeah.
And he just brought it up randomly. He's like, hey, I showed Matt, which Matt is the other producing partner, and he is the one who had money. He's like invested in that movie too.
Yeah.
And their company's called Duelist, and it was just the two of them. And Kenny says during lunch, we're like eating conch or something. And Kenny's like, oh, I talked to Matt. I showed him the script and he really liked it. He wants to help you make it. And I never even told him like, oh, can you show Matt?
Yeah.
It was just, we liked each other, and I guess he liked the work.
Yeah.
He liked our work ethic on set, and he just felt like sharing. And then, 2017, we started doing rewrites, and then it was kind of a slow process because we were determining like, what's the budget? Is he going to put in all the budget? Are we going to try to raise equity on the side? And eventually he put in the whole amount. Yeah, our budget is around 200,000, a little less. And it started, we were like, we could make this for like 80.
Yeah.
And then it started to balloon a little bit.
Yeah.
But we kept it pretty low. It's pretty low. And I think we did a lot with that amount because there's stunts, there's special effects.
Absolutely.
There's things that we do kind of execute a certain way to help with that budget. Like we're in a house for most of the movie. The camera barely moves.
Yeah.
The cast is sort of limited.
Yeah.
But we also have stunts, company moves, blood, so much wardrobe.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about movies that take place in one night. That's smart because then you only need one wardrobe. This one had like 5 story days. We needed like 4 pairs of pants that were the same because there's a screwdriver in them, and then blood. And so I felt like it was doable, and I think we executed well for that budget. We released during COVID, and I think that may have affected the sale of it and just all of it, like the release, even the emotional, like, we're going to our premiere, and not just being stuck at home. But I never want to be negative because some movies don't sell at all without a pandemic. Movies that are amazing, they never see the light of day. So I'm like, the fact that we made this tiny horror movie and it sold to Dark Sky, and we've sold in other territories, and we have a physical release, and we did like a tiny theatrical, all that is like a win.
Cool. Absolutely. Tell me about your first day on set.
Scared as fuck. I was, it was very small, but people are still walking in. There's still cars parking, pulling wardrobes, and I'm like, damn, this is all happening. This is crazy. I probably didn't sleep well the night before. But everyone felt like they were there because they wanted to be there, and it felt very nice, like this summer camp. And I had so many people that I loved and trusted already. My brother, my dad, Ivana, and Kenny. And so we felt like we had the even though we weren't home, it felt like a home field advantage. And then everyone else we were just building rapport. And I had built some of that with some of the actors already.
How long was principal photography?
20 days.
Solid.
There was like 1 or 2 pickup days that it was just following the truck.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like it was like right after principal photography. So it's kind of like, I don't know. We didn't do pickups like in the edit. It was just that.
You didn't have to do any reshoots or anything like that.
No.
It's very impressive.
We did a lot of re-editing. But the script was 73 pages. The first cut was 112 minutes, and we cut it down to 90. And the ending that we shot wasn't working at all. We completely like restructured with the editor TJ and the producers, and they sort of like figured it out. And I was open to it. Because I feel like when we saw the last scene, it just wasn't working.
How did you get your actors there?
It's funny because I remember, as I mentioned, Yorgos in an interview, he's like, I never tell them to do it. And I never really did either. Like, I'm never like, oh, it's supposed to be like very stoic and deadpan. I think with specific notes and scenes, if someone's saying something loud and I feel like the way I imagined it was like almost like a whisper, I would tell them to do it at that register, and then, you know, we figured out in the edit. But I don't know why, I always picture things like less. I always like subdued or understated performances are always nicer to me. And there are moments where they kind of like blow a fuse, but it sort of makes those moments bigger when you have the rest of the movie kind of sitting quietly or playing quietly. But I would tell, we did one table read, there was no rehearsals, and I told Ingrid, because it was great what she was doing, but some of it was a little bit louder. She's kind of like the matriarchal foundation of this house, and she sort of like rules over them. And I told her, instead of like yelling or being confrontational on it, I told her to rule with a whisper. And I feel like she took that note and made so much beauty from it.
Or do you think that has anything to do with the script?
Yeah, I think the page, and I do this now more, but being a little bit stylized on the page. So I was trying to be conscious of, you know, the rules, like one page is 1 minute roughly. So I would write, if it's him driving, you know, I wouldn't write Dwight drives. One of the producers would make fun of me because I was writing like Dwight's hunched over, barely manning the wheel. His shoulders rattle through every pothole. He veers off. His eyes are like fixed. His gaze moves. It's so much of that, and like it's in reality, because I know that when you shorten the movie, even though there's not much happening, you might sit on that for 30 seconds. So then I'm like, all right, it has to be half a page. So I'm writing all this shit that's like prose almost, but it does set the mood. It sets the tone, because then Patrick knows like, okay, I could just sit in here and really just like soak in what I'm doing. Sometimes like film Twitter's like, don't do this. You got to do the way that, but then I see scripts from my friends that have made movies with like Neon and these huge companies, and their scripts are so stylized. Like I'm talking about like huge font, bold, all caps, italics, different colors, photos. I'm like, this is cool.
Give the person reading something to capture their attention and help translate your vision.
Because the people who are reading this, a lot of the times the people who you want to read this are producers or investors or studios who they want it to be super clear, and sometimes clarity is down to the beauty on the page. Like if you're writing a scare, make them feel the scare with like the formatting, you know, that's what's going to make them feel connected to it more than like, I could write this beautiful paragraph with like big words and you can sort of get lost in the sauce of it.
Yeah. They don't want to read all that. Tell me about working with your dad and your brother.
Worked with my brother since we worked at Publix, this Florida grocery store. We worked at Chili's. We worked weddings together. We worked at a Trinity Broadcast Network, a Christian. So we've always been attached at the hip, and we always skateboarded. And along with our other brother, they would like play in metal bands and stuff. So we've been so close that it only feels natural to do it that way. I just don't know how else to do it. Like,
Yeah.
and I just love working with him. And then my dad is he's like my role model. You know, he came from Colombia. He hustled so much to make it, like riding bike for miles to go to school, to then go to like 2 jobs, and like so much that he had to do. And sort of, I almost see it like, I don't want to say he sacrificed an artistic career, but I feel like he sort of it had to go by the wayside because he had to raise us and like maintain a household. Yeah. And so I find it funny that we pursued these creative careers, and now there's like a pocket for him to come in and like play with us. Yeah. And so it was great just to have him, like it's a nice feeling to have him be part of it and like tap back into it. Absolutely. Because he was really dressing the house. Like, oh yeah, that house did not look like that at all. He wanted to be an architect, so he had like these blueprints of the house with measurements, and like, this is where, and working in tandem, like Dad, I want the coverage to be like this, and it needs to work for every scene. So how would the bed placement work best? Yeah, you know,
that's amazing.
And then the curtains and the wallpaper. Yeah, it's just so much stuff.
Yeah. So tell me about post. Because
we did an assembly cut within a week of or 2 weeks of wrapping, because TG's in Salt Lake, and I didn't want to go to Miami to come back, so I stuck around and we went straight into editing.
Yeah.
He's so fast. And then I went back to Miami and I was giving him notes on Google Docs. Like, we never talked on the phone.
That's crazy.
It's like Google Doc frames. I would write the frame and like write the note, and then he would just like delete it as he would, and I would just see him like live, and then he would send me cuts. And then I went back to Utah before Picture Lock to do like temp sound and temp score.
Tell me how Dark Sky found the film and what your guys' work together was like.
So we had a sales agent come on even before we had a premiere. They're Visit Films from, I think, in New York, and they're a great sales agent, and they were doing our worldwide rights. So they've sold domestically to Dark Sky, and they've done a lot of deals like in Europe, South America, Asia, all over the place. You know, it's just so hard to sell a film in general. Yeah. That I feel lucky that Dark Sky believed in it, and they really pushed it. They got it on Shudder, which was great. Yeah. And now it's still there. It's on Peacock and Prime, and all these other streamers.
What can you tell us about what's coming next for you?
I'm developing 2 things. One of them is a film that I wrote, an original script that I've been working on since 2021. A lot of it's in Spanish. It's about 2 Colombian sisters. We're taxi drivers, and the one of them starts to change, and it's sort of a fun possession movie set in the 80s, and like the best time in Miami. Oh yeah. A very dangerous time, but also the best music and the best fashion. And then I'm also developing a serial killer thing with another company. So that one was sort of brought to me. Yeah. But I'm having fun collaborating with that producer on kind of like, I don't know how much I could say, but it's like a band of misfit kids who are essentially fighting back. They're not just gonna be the helpless teenagers who get killed off by a serial killer. They're gonna fight back. So that's what I could say. Yeah. So those 2 things mainly.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
And then editing other stuff. Yeah.
All right, Jonathan, this was so amazing. Where can people see My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To now?
It's on Peacock, it's on Prime, it's on Tubi for free, I believe, with ads and some of the other, like Plex or something. Yeah. But it's also on Screambox for the horror lovers. It used to be on Shudder, but now it's on Screambox. And it's also available on Blu-ray for the physical media lovers. And there's also there's this French company called Extra Lucid Films that they made. It's like, I think like 2 of them on that team, and they're so passionate. Yeah. And that one has like a lot of bonus features. It has a whole interview. It has one of my shorts on there. So it's like so much extra features. And so it's called Extra Lucid Films, and it's like a DVD Blu-ray combo. And I believe you could order that online as
Yeah,
well.
that sounds amazing. I love physical media, and some of that money goes back to the filmmaker. So consider it if you have the funds. Thank you all so much for joining us. And Jonathan, I think we'll need to have you back for my second film.
Yeah, we'll do a special on that. Yeah.
I can't wait. Thank you so much again.
Yeah.
Cheers. That was an incredible interview. I'm so grateful for Jonathan for really peeling back the curtain and showing us his process and how he got this movie done. If you haven't seen the film, please make sure to check it out. You will not regret it. It is actually amazing. So I'm recording this podcast the same day as my pod with Joel Petrikis. I already gave the full update for Petunia there, but in terms of accountability, I'm recording my next podcast in 2 days. I want to have sent the cleaned up deck to at least one person to get the ball rolling on fundraising and development, and that will be my goal for the next pod. So I will see you on the next one. We have an amazing guest. I can't wait to tell you all about them. Thank you so much for tuning in to My First Film, the podcast where we ask some of Hollywood's hottest directors how they made their first films. Please check us out on socials at My First Film Pod. Check out our website, myfirstfilmpod.com. Check out my full article with Jonathan at provideocoalition.com. Pro Video Coalition is a distributor of this podcast, and they have tons of great filmmaking educational resources online. Gratitude to Mackenzie Malley, Oscar Alva, Avery Pascal, and Kenny McMillan for making this podcast reality. Thanks so much. We'll see you on the next one.